We are very, very excited to be here. Today's event and our entire summit is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros, or MSP as we like to call ourselves. If you're not familiar, we are without a doubt the largest and the highest quality revenue leadership community. We're helping you to answer all of the questions that you might be struggling to answer on your own, and we will be inviting you to be a member of our community after the summit, so we hope you join. Am I sounding okay? Am I echoing?
Slight echo, but that's all right.
Slight echo, okay. All right, let's hope this works. This summit would not be possible without our amazing partners who are all on this slide. We can give them a little snap, give them a little clap. Thank you so much to them for making this happen. If you want to show them some love, there's some people hanging out in the booths. If you navigate over on your Goldcast to the booth tab, you can see and hang out with the folks in there. This summit is full of the latest do's and don'ts for your 2022 SKOs, whether you're in sales or marketing or customer success. There is content for everybody. This is the very last event of our second day. Before this, we had our very own Pete Sandy talk to us about how to take your underdog to your top performer. We had Melanie Fillet's amazing keynote on growing your startup to something really awesome. And then, of course, tomorrow we'll have a full day full of events for you. If you want to check more of those out, you can visit the agenda tab at the top of your Goldcast page as well. Our agenda for this session, I'll go by it really quickly. We're going to do some housekeeping. We're going to have the speakers do a little introduction of themselves, dive right into the content, and they'll answer your questions that you're hopefully putting into the Q&A chat, and we'll wrap up. Before we dive in, quick housekeeping notes. Of course, this is being recorded. We're going to send it to you. We know lots of folks are going to ask. Yes, we are going to send you this amazing content, so don't worry about that. And second, we want this to be as interactive as possible. Please do use the Q&A feature if you can, or let us know what you're thinking and your little supports and raise the roofs in the chat. We love to see the emojis going. Without further ado, we're going to pass it off to our amazing moderator for this panel, which is Amy Volas. Amy, take it away.
Hello, everybody. I am thrilled to be here. This is a topic that is so near and dear to my heart. I own an executive search firm called Avenue Talent Partners, where we help earlier stage SaaS startups hire executive sales and CS leaders. And this is a topic that comes up a lot behind the scenes in my world of, I want to be a CRO, I want to be a CMO, I want to be a chief growth officer, I want to be insert C and fancy title, and that's what they want to be. And there are a lot of things to think about beyond just that goal. And I am thrilled to join these three wonderfully accomplished and smart individuals to break this down out loud together. So my name is Amy Volas. I am the founder and CEO of Avenue Talent Partners. I am going to be taking us on a guided tour together to break this bad boy down. For anybody that's joining us, we want this to be interactive. We want this to be helpful. Please drop your questions. Welcome. And without further ado, I would love to start some introductions here to find out who's who. So, Anna, do you want to go first, my fellow sister in print?
I would love to go first. Thank you, Amy. So my name is Anna Fisker. I am currently the CMO at Spiff. For those of you who are not familiar with Spiff, we consider ourselves a new class of software, so solving a problem a little bit differently. And we're putting trust back into the commission process by really delivering real-time automation of commission calculations. So taking the really challenging task that finance and sales operation leaders have, and hopefully simplifying it for you with some and providing transparency for the sales teams that commissions are there to serve. So really excited to be here.
Excellent. Udi or Kyle, who would like to go first since you're both battling for the best CMO?
Kyle, I insist.
Go, Udi. Udi's going.
Hi, everyone. My name is Udi. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Gong, the revenue intelligence platform where we unlock reality to help people and companies reach their full potential. I've been with Gong for 5 years, now a $7+ billion company. I was the first marketer, and I'm proud to serve with 40 other marketers on the team, and really looking forward to this panel today.
Kyle, take us home with the intros.
All right. My name's Kyle. I lead marketing for a company called Seismic. It's an enablement platform. So it's enabling sales teams and engaging with buyers and improving coaching, training, everything you could possibly think of to drive sales productivity and sales growth. I was previously at Lessonly for 4.5 years. We were acquired by Seismic, and I joined the Seismic leadership team in October. Very different realm where Lessonly was 250 employees, Seismic's 1,500. It's a very different approach to the CXO route. Before that, I was at ExactTarget, Salesforce, and I spent some time at a venture capital firm. Pleased to be here, and I am Amy's biggest fan.
Kyle. That's why
I changed my picture to match your coat, your jacket.
I mean, I'm just waiting for that llama gear. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. I think it's important as we build into or onto or about or around or whatever we're doing. Sorry, I'm getting an echo, so it's throwing me off, y'all. But that being said, I think it's important to think about the foundational elements of this conversation. And before you can ever get to that C level that the three of you are at, let's talk about what you need to be thinking about before you even start. What skills, in your opinion, are table stakes as you want to get to the C level? So Udi, let's start with you. How do you think about that?
Yeah, happy to address that, Amy. I think one of the things that sort of mark people or identify people in the organization that they might be ready for that next promotion, eventually leading into the C-suite, is that they identify, call out, and solve problems that are outside of their functional area. Some companies simply call this nothing is someone else's problem, and other companies look for more and more cross-functional work so that you're lifting your head above your functional area, whatever that is, whether you're in sales or CS or marketing or engineering or finance or people. There's always the bigger picture, the bigger company picture, and being able to lift your head above taking care of your team, which is always going to be important, but really starting to think like an executive and looking out for the broader company picture. I think that's what identifies some of those people that they might be ready for the next step.
Anna,
Yeah.
I think you've got something to say. I can see you chomping at the bit to dig
I
in here.
do. I couldn't agree with that more. To me, it's actually a bit of how do we solve other people's problems, but really even solving our own problems and either knowing the answer or figuring out a way to find the answer and solve the problem. So very similar to what Udi said. And then I would add just clear communication, like communicating what you're going to do, what you're not going to do, communicating if there's a difference in timeline. There's nothing that really bothers people more than when you are misaligned with them. And again, a lot of time, it just goes back to really clear communication. Again, those are the biggest two things. I mean, there's obviously a lot of other areas, but if nothing else, those are the two that come top of mind for me.
Kyle, how are you thinking about it?
I mainly try to focus on empathy in leadership. I don't know if I describe it as servant leadership, but that's kind of a coin term that everybody uses. But it's having empathy for the team and also meeting people where they are and just being vulnerable as a leader. I think it's mostly just me projecting on something that I had to learn to get to where I am, which is I had to understand empathy. I had to build empathy within the way that I led, and it really helps when you meet people where they are and you engage them in an empathetic way. Teams will work harder for the org in general.
Well, let's be honest. It starts with all of you, right? You're setting the stage early and often for the tone of what's going to happen and the dynamic of the team. And it's not do as I say, right? Not as I do. Yeah. It's really leading. And a couple of things that I think I hear a lot about, I think a lot about the work that I do with my clients. When you have the C title, if you're really a true CRO, CMO, chief growth officer, whatever, COO, it doesn't matter whatever that C title is. When you are that leader, you are an executive with a seat at that table. And so it's really important to think about how you sit at that table, the way that you think about what that seat at the table means. In addition to that, remember, these are highly strategic roles. So when we're thinking about the skills you need to have before you even start, in my opinion, clarity is king. When I'm clear about who I am and what I do and what I'm really good at and what I'm not so good at, and my strengths around the business, as a strategic leader in that kind of role, you are a leader of other leaders. And when you know your own gaps, you can hire well to support the organization around you. It is a strategic role of leaders. It's not just you being a doer, it's being a strategic thinker. And I think that's a big chasm to cross for many people. Of they're used to, especially in startups, when people will come my way and say, I want to be a CRO of a seed stage company. That does not exist, right? That CRO is not really a real role. If we're talking about the true definition of what that role does, you're doing a lot of the doing, a lot of the building. And when you get to a Seismic, a Spiff, a Gong, Udi, you just said it. How many people on your team again? For those that are
40.
listening,
40 on my team. We're about 900 company-wide.
So these are the things to be thinking about. So I think when it comes to skills, do you like doing? Do you like building? Or do you like heavy executive strategic thinking? And either way, whether you're doing building or strategic thinking, those are all important roles. The work is different. So that's where that clarity piece is really, really key. By the way, anyone thinking about, well, what skills do I need to have? And you're joining us, please drop your questions in the chat. We want to make sure that this is interactive and helpful. But it starts with that foundational piece of skills. And then we think about, well, what skills do I need to acquire to grow into the role? So all of us have learned lessons through the course of our careers. When you think about skills to grow into that seat at that table, how would you describe that? Who wants to take a shot at that first?
I can jump in. Why not? So I have had, I'll call it a privilege. Early on at my time at ZoomInfo, I really had to prove every single channel and make sure that it was successful before I was able to hire someone to take it over. And so what I kind of learned early on there, and I spent 8 years at ZoomInfo prior to joining Spiff, and as we grew the marketing org, is that you can't do it all. There's no way, or you will fail. And so even if you think you can do it better, it's better to train that person or teach them how to do it and let go. And then always really hiring for the gaps. I think you mentioned that. So what I've really learned is I want people who do it better than me. I want to be able to understand big picture, what we're trying to accomplish. And then when I look to hire for my team, I want someone leading digital on the team who is better than me, who knows more best practices, right? It's been a while since I've led a digital team or done the work myself. And so I think there's an element of knowing how everything should look and understanding the big picture, and then really hiring those people. It really is all about the people. And if there's a gap within your organization or a gap within your team, hiring the best person for that, who has the skill set. And again, ideally they have more skills than I do, so that we can continue to get better. That's again, one thing that I've had to learn through experience. And I'm so glad that I learned it early on, because it's allowed me to really make sure that, as I think about hiring, as I think about the team, I really appreciate the people on my team more than anything else, because none of this would have been possible without them.
Udi can speak to this as well, but I do think that on the hiring front, that's probably the largest skill set that I developed over the past 5.5 years, and it was dependent on the growth stage. Like a lesson early on, we hired around proactive people, not necessarily a skill set.
Yeah.
Like one of my best hires was Ben Battaglia. He's our head of creative and brand at Seismic now, and he wasn't even in software when he interviewed. So you got to get really good. You got to set the interview process up appropriately. You got to get really good at filling the gaps that you have, but also realizing talent when you see it.
Yeah.
And if you get really good at that and you're good at the leadership side, then people will come with you. And that's when I feel like that, if I look to any of the people like mentors or people that I look up to as leaders, they have the ability to do that. They will go to a company and bring 5 or 6 people with them. Then you know you've unlocked something. And I think it has a lot, there's a lot of different stages of growth to a company, especially venture backed, which we all are. But you got to recognize talent. And I had to work really hard learning that.
Yeah.
That's super true. I agree with everything that both Amy and Kyle have said, and Anna, sorry. I found that there's a few ways to building that team. One, just like Kyle said, if you bring an A player, they will bring other A players. I see that whenever I bring a leader into a function that I'm trying to fill, and within 6 months, like he's got 3, 4, 5 people following them from their previous company, you made a good hire because there are people who follow this person and want to build their careers around them. Heck, I followed my CEO to the 3rd company that we're at together now. So it really works. And unfortunately, if you bring a B player, they can only bring C players. And then everything starts to fall apart from there. And you see that happening. You see mediocre leader hiring even worse people, because who would want to work for a mediocre leader, right? People want to work for inspiring leaders. So the A plus bring A players, the B players unfortunately only bring C players. Having said that, I think there's also a lot of opportunities to help people climb the ladder of their professional careers and hire people with potential over experience. Now, you can't do this for every role. You're not going to hire someone from a fast food chain to come and manage your revenue team. But I like telling the story of someone like Vince on my team, who manages social media as well as our email campaigns and a bunch of things. His last job was on his uncle's food truck. They make fantastic Filipino food, by the way. I order them all the time. But I took this guy who had 0 experience in tech, 0 experience in marketing. He joined as an intern for a couple of months helping with an event. And he was so quick to learn everything we were doing. And when it came time to consider offering a full-time position, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that he was right. And he's been with us for 2.5 years now and really excelling his career and our team. So I think it's that combination of bringing experience when you absolutely need it, like think about a complex product marketing role or something of that sort, and then hiring for potential over experience where the job role and responsibilities allow for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think hiring someone with grit, or someone who cares to learn, or who cares to just jump in and give it their all. I have someone on my team now who fortunately followed me from ZoomInfo, who I'm just incredibly proud of her career. She started with me years ago at ZoomInfo as a content writer, and that just really wasn't her passion. It wasn't where she was good, and we kind of found, look, what's a better fit for her. And now she is probably one of the best, like genuinely, I could say this, the best customer and product marketing people I've ever met. Like that was her niche. That's where she absolutely shined. And she's definitely a leader in that role. She understands the problem. She sees problems that other people don't, and she solves them before they've become a problem. And it's really figuring out what's the right place for that human, for that person, because, it takes somebody who has, potential and understanding, like maybe they're just not crushing the specific role because that's not the right fit for them. And she's an incredible writer. So it wasn't that writing was the problem. It just wasn't the biggest passion area. And so I think at the end of the day, it's if you found people who you're willing to invest in, figuring out the right place for them, and they really can shine on your team. So kind of comment on what you guys said around that too.
Well, and to underscore a couple of points that were made, I think it's really key to remember who you hire shapes what happens next. And Udi, you were talking about A players. I was talking about this yesterday. I find that most people don't understand what that looks like, right? That's a big term that's thrown around quite a bit, but there's a lack of intentionality and thoughtfulness up front for what an A player looks like for your business. All 3 of you are in different businesses at different evolutions. Serving different things, even if it's a little competitive from time to time. The point is what you do, how you do it, why you're doing it, and the people that are on the bus with you. That's a very different thing. And so I really encourage people to take a breath and think about what is the work that is required to do this role well. And that's when you can figure out, is this a potential that I'm hiring for? Or does this require a body of work and experience to back it up? And if we're talking about hiring at the C level, as much as I would love to say that that's a potential hire, it is not. And so Cliff has a really good question.
I'm happy to take Cliff's question.
Which is the better path? Or what are the differences? Promote to CRO or be hired into CRO? So I'd love to open this up. Cliff, excellent question. Udi is chomping at the bit to answer it.
All right. So now I'm going to make an ass of myself because I was looking at Cliff's other question, or maybe it's even another Cliff under the Q&A tab when he was asking. Oh, sorry, that was John. I was looking at Cliff's name, but looking at John's question. So I'll wait to answer John's question. That's the one I'm passionate to answer. So I'll let someone else take it.
Amy, you need it. Like, this is what you do. I don't really have I don't, it really, there's so many different variables here. I mean, so many different. Sometimes you don't want to be promoted into it. Sometimes you want to be hired into it. But this is what you do. So I'd prefer you to answer this for Cliff. And then we can answer John's.
Then we've got to get to John's question. So John's question is going to skip the line, as Scott Leese would say if he were here. But I will say this. I'm with you, Kyle. It depends. And Cliff, I wish I could give you an if this, then that. It's not that cut and dry. The person that gets promoted to the CRO, what is their background? What is their experience? What are they doing today? Do they have the chops to assume that seat? I love a good promotion story. But if you've never seen that before and you're pre-IPO and you are finding yourself being a fish out of water and you can't figure it out and you're going to your executive team over and over again, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? That screams to me that you still need some coaching and some development, which isn't a bad thing, but you might need people over you to show you how that's done. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think it really depends on the dynamics. It depends on the background of the individual. It depends on how they show up to have that seat at the table. The one thing that I'll say that prevents people from getting promoted to the CRO role, I'm just saying that specifically because you've got it here in your question, Cliff, is they're not thinking about the entire strategic organization. They're thinking about their piece of the pie and their piece of the pie only. And for any C-level role, it's not just what you represent, it's being an ambassador for the entire organization, and sometimes conceding to things you've got to concede to because it's for the greater good. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, and you can't go in like a wrecking ball where it's my way or the highway. And that's the thing that I find that people struggle with the most, is especially if they came up through sales, they're not thinking across the revenue enterprise in the same way that they should. And that's where some of that additional coaching and development happens. So Cliff, love the question. Not that cut and dry of if this, then that. They both are wonderful ways to have the role. It just is how you're getting there and what you bring to the table to get there. So with that said, John Harrison, when hiring, how do you identify true passion in the interview process? What do you look for? Udi, you've been waiting for this.
Yes, you can tell I'm passionate about John's questions on passion.
Yeah.
I am passionate about this, and I think it's pretty easy. Look, when I interview hundreds of candidates a year, and you can easily tell the difference between those where you ask them the simple question. The first question I ask every candidate who comes to an interview is, what brings you today to Gong? That's my question. And I don't give them more details on what I'm looking for, and they can take that in a variety of different directions. So some of them will tell me, well, things have been getting kind of slow where I'm currently at, or we're downsizing, and I saw your ad. I thought it looked like an interesting opportunity, so here I am. Okay, that's one story. They need to pay the bills. I get it. We all do. And then there's another story of a candidate who says, I've been following your company. I'm obsessed about it. I've been reading all your articles for the last 2 years. It's jump-started my career. I'm so excited about AI and how it's changing your industry. This is my dream to be on this team. And I'm not making any of these words up. These are all from real interviews. Now, of course, I want the second candidate, not the first one. Now, most candidates will fall somewhere between I have no idea who I'm interviewing for today, and the one who are obsessed about the company. But you definitely want those who are leaning more about obsessed about the company. And some of the telltale signs are they've read all of your content. They've read your bio. You know, if you've written a book or done a webinar, they've read that and listened to that, and they will quote that to show you that they know you. If they can't do any of that, if they are showing up to the interview and asking what the company does, they're not passionate about the company. It's pretty easy.
Anna, what do you look for on the passion front?
Yeah, so I look for passion. I look for somebody who has like something they care about, something they care about. Some of the things I ask people to do is challenging. Like every day is not super easy, and so I think people who don't have a passion for what they do, regardless of if it's marketing operations or whatever role within the organization that they're taking, it doesn't have to be the thing they're the most passionate about. But I want to see that something excites them. I agree with Udi. Like, I don't know why anybody would want to work for someone they have no idea who they are. They haven't done any research. Like, I researched Spiff like crazy before I joined. And one of the biggest reasons was I loved the humans and the team, the people, but I researched them first. And it wasn't necessarily all about the product per se, but I wanted to understand, like, do these people have passion? Is there something here? So both for when you're looking for a new role, but also when you are hiring, like, that matters. I do also want to understand skill set, and did they accurately represent their true skills on their resume? So what I'm looking for isn't necessarily that they know how to do all the things, but they're willing to say, I don't know, or they're willing to speak up if they are not sure or ask more questions. So I'm looking for someone who can really take that team mentality and be like, I'm not the know-it-all for everything. Let's figure this out together. And just good humans, like, at the end of the day, sometimes it's really hard to figure out in an interview. But if I'm adding someone to our, as corny as it's going to sound, to our family, right, I want to make sure it's someone who's going to be a culture add, someone who's going to either bring something different to the table or just be willing to really just jump in. So a lot of different things, and it really does depend on the seniority of the role and sort of where I'm coming in on the interview. Sometimes I'm sort of the last person to meet somebody, just as kind of a final, sounds great. Sometimes I'm the first person. So, I look for those things from anybody really that I interview.
So
the one thing I would note is do not confuse enthusiasm with passion in an interview process.
Yes.
I have talked to plenty of high D, high I, if you're a disc fan, which I am, individuals who are very enthusiastic and very happy and very in your face. And that, for me, that's a great thing. It helps because I'm the same way. But the way, it's understanding. I always ask something that they're passionate about outside of work.
Yeah.
It helps me try to understand where they spend their time. It's not a judgment. It's a question on how I get to, can they be enthusiastic outside of just talking to me about demand gen or content, whatever. But I've made that mistake before, Amy. That's why I brought it up, is that I've seen enthusiasm and said, wow, they're passionate.
I just went through this for a very different role. We hired an assistant for our team, and the person that I wanted to get the job didn't get the job. She was super enthusiastic through the process. And then we baked in sort of the show part instead of the tell, and fell so flat and so short. And it was just such a bummer. And so there's three things, right? So Anna, you mentioned something really interesting. And I'm going to ask you to mute Anna for just a second, because I think I'm getting feedback off of you being unmuted for, let me see if it's me. Is it me? Anna, can you mute? There's this major echo. We still have the echo. I don't know what's happening. Anna, it's not you.
Udi, you mute too. Let's all mute.
No, let's all not. It's just it's technology. Mercury is in retrograde, everybody. So that's what's happening right now. All right. So let's just
For what it's worth, I'm not getting the echo, Amy. So I don't know if it's only you or only I'm not getting it.
It could very well be me. But the one thing I want to think about out loud, and Anna, you touched on it, is how people show up in the interview, and that you're so surprised that they just show up and they're not doing the things that you did when you were looking at Spiff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of window shopping being done right now because the market is on fire. And what I would encourage everybody to think about is, just because there's a lot doesn't mean that the quality quotient has elevated as well. It's actually stayed the same, or it's decreased. And so I look for three things personally: skill, will, and then the lean-in factor. And Udi, we're talking a lot about the lean-in factor. It's not what you're telling me, your big shiny statements. It's how you're showing up. It's that you're following through. It's that you're brainstorming with me. It's that you're bringing ideas to the table. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what makes a C-level executive. I want to just a second, and I think I am the culprit here. I'm going to mute myself after this. Mike Hook has a great question. Kyle, our fellow TNS, love us some Mike Hook. What are the best ways you've learned cross-departmental expertise to help allow you to think strategically for the entire business as you move from VP to the C level? It's a phenomenal question. I'm going to open this up and see if I'm the culprit by muting myself.
No, I'm not sure who it is, but I can still hear it. That's okay. We're going to move forward. Hey, Mike. I'll just touch on this briefly. For me, it's been spending time with different teams. Really, if I one word, it's time. Pipeline meetings, forecast meetings, alignment meetings, whatever the hell you want to call them. You have to spend time with your peers. Most of where I see it break is when leaders are siloed and not talking to each other. And if you're not, it's hard to do. Anything worth doing is difficult, honestly. But for me, it's the amount of time you spend with peers and with other people on the team. And one of the things that we do at Seismic, and we did at Leslie, was encourage our teammates to spend at least once every week or once every other week with a peer from a different team. And you can there's tons of Slack apps that you can use, like Coffee and Donut Chat, whatever the hell they're called now. But just communicating and talking. I don't even care if it's about a project, just talking about life. It will force a lot of it if you do that appropriately.
Yeah, just to add on to what Kyle said, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article about it called something like CMO, do you know how your CRO takes her coffee? And if you don't know how your CRO takes her coffee, you're not meeting her often enough. It's a really simple test. And it's a trick question because my CRO doesn't drink coffee. He only has tea. And I know that because I meet him weekly. And we used to go for coffee/tea runs when we were in the office together. Now we do it all virtually, unfortunately. But you really, really got to meet your cross-functional partners as often as you humanly can. It takes up a ton of time. Sometimes there's no big agenda and you just shoot the breeze and ask how was their weekend and how are the kids doing. And you know what, that has value too. But more often than not, there's something that's bugging them right now, which is under the bar of what would be important and urgent enough for them to write an email or call a meeting about. But the fact that you have this time already set on the calendar with them means that you get to learn about this stuff before it becomes a problem. And that is so valuable. So by understanding what your peers are going through, whether or not it has direct impact on you right now, you've got a heads up now. And if it does impact you, or if it's going to impact you down the road, you can manage it earlier and sooner rather than later. So that's super important what Kyle said.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think being a true partner to other executives within the organization or other teams within the organization, for me, it's definitely, the sales org, but it's also the customer success organization and product, knowing what's happening and asking a simple question of is there anything I can do to help? And sometimes they're like, no, and sometimes they just want to vent. And sometimes there really is something super simple that you can do, or even something not as simple, but something you should help them with. And I think if we all ask each other a little bit more of like, anything I can do to help, anything, maybe they just have an idea they want to run by you, or you have an idea you want to run by them. I think people appreciate being included. I think sometimes it's important for the organization for everyone not to just know about their one little thing that they're responsible for, but other areas. And even if there's not much they can do, at least for them to feel and for you to feel like you have other partners out there, it has just made a huge difference. And I think Kyle said this best, where he said, just takes so much time, and it does take so much time. But I really can't think of another thing that would be more useful, not just for yourself, but for the organization, sort of like for the greater good of the company. And then sometimes I also think just getting to know other people on other teams, so not even just your peers, but other people, so that they can see you more as a human. And again, having that empathy. People are often, I'm surprised sometimes when people are just so willing to jump in and help, and you just if you at least know who they are, especially as organizations grow and scale, it gets harder and harder to get to know everybody.
You want to be an executive, guess what? That's what you're going to do. You hear it all the time, but my job is alignment. My job is to take care of my team and align with other leaders to make sure we're all moving in the same direction. That's it. You want to be an executive, you're going to be in meetings. I don't know who these people are that have 20 hours a week of free thought, right? Like Udi, I don't know if you do or Anna, but you're going to be
retired
about alignment.
Well, and there's a lot to be thinking about when it comes to the meetings that you're having, right? So it's not just about what you want to get done. When you're sitting at that C-level table, it's about what everybody's trying to get done. And I find, Anna, you made a really good point about thinking across the organization. The best thing that I see the best leaders do is they really cultivate. And it doesn't mean that it's all rainbows and roses, or you're always going to agree, or you're going to be snuggling up 24/7. But it does mean that you have a mutual respect. And I find progress happens when it's not, oh, well, we're just going to agree to disagree, because that just shuts a conversation down. It's, are we clear about what we are disagreeing on? And that is where progress can happen. And so one of the things I think that's really important at this level is you've got to do a great job of being an ambassador for the function that you represent, to foster strong relationships across the company, down the company, around the company, up the company, with the board. These are all things that are really, really important for people to think about. And I think sometimes when pressure's on, we have goals, all of the things are happening, it's like you get tunnel vision and you miss this major opportunity to be in rooms where people want to include you because you've done that. What you don't know that happens in those rooms can hurt your ability to really represent what you're trying to do well. So we have a really good question. I hope I'm saying your name the right way. It's either Jeffrey or Joffrey. Do you think CXOs can do both? Doing early stage moving to thinking later stage. So all of us have been part of different stages and things. I'm really curious from each one of you. Do you think somebody can do both?
This is a great question because all of us have experienced this. So I'm gonna wait to give my feedback.
Who wants to take a crack at it first?
I'm happy to, unless Anna wants to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. So I can give an example from our actual C-suite here at Gong. So 4 of us joined the company in the first few months. Our 2 co-founders, the CEO, the CTO, or Chief Product Officer, I should say now, and then our Chief Customer Officer, who has gone through 3 different roles in the last 6 years that he's been at Gong. And I was the 4th executive to join as our first batch of customers was coming out of beta, and we were ready to start marketing this to the mass market. So I've been with the company for over 5 years. Now, we are now operating at a scale that all 4 of us have never really experienced, but the other 60% of our C-suite, they have come from much larger companies. So our CFO, our president and COO, our chief people officer, and VP R&D, SVP R&D, they all come from companies where they have seen scale. And I think by blending these people who have been with the company from day one, so they have a lot of the organizational DNA and all of this learning that is really hard to replicate, and then bringing in people with experience at scale when we need them, we've been able to harmonize these together and create a winning team. So I don't think that's the only way to do it, but it's worked really well for Gong.
Yeah, I'll kind of go from my experience in the last year plus. So coming over from ZoomInfo, where I, kind of scaled and grew with the organization starting pretty early on, and we had some acquisitions and an IPO, and then coming to Spiff, kind of starting, we'll call it all over. At first, it was really challenging because I was kind of like, well, where's the process? Where is, what's happening here? And, it was a little bit more challenging at the beginning. I'll tell you what, though, the rowing stage has been so much more fun than I remember it. And so I'm excited to get to the point where we're much, much bigger, but kind of enjoying the ride for now. And as I was able to grow the team and sort of have people join in marketing, I was kind of the first one in marketing here. First couple months was kind of hard, to be honest, coming from kind of had process for myself. Like, oh, I will put everything. Anyways, it was Asana. So I started putting tickets in for myself in Asana. I was like, well, this is weird. But, as we continue to grow, I did find that those things are important. And I think they're lessons that I think our marketing org and our organization as a whole has been able to grow faster because I had that experience coming in. Our new CPO, who's incredible, also had that experience from larger organizations coming in. And so the very first thing he did was put in process, right, for the team. And so now when you hire people, again, there's a little bit more of that. And so, but, I know I probably rub some of our founders the wrong way when I'm like, yeah, we're not going to do it this way. You have to submit a ticket if you want. If you have an opinion on the website, I appreciate your opinion, but this is how it has to be done. Sure, that's annoying. Like I can admit that, but I also know that those are the things. And again, it doesn't have to be for everything, right? Like it's not over the top, but I think there's an element of having seen how it works successfully as you scale and sort of demanding that we do that when applicable. That helps. Now, for people who have never seen scale, I can imagine that's probably challenging. And so I do think it's harder to grow into it if it's not like organic growth. So you're growing with the organization. Coming into a larger organization, for example, as a C-level executive, you haven't seen that elsewhere, I think would be challenging.
Yeah, I think that, so I'm 4 months into this exec role at Seismic, and they're 10x larger than Lessonly. And here's what I found, which kind of threw me off, because this is my first go. Lessonly was my first growth stage, and Seismic's 3 billion valuation, right? Just much bigger. It's all the same issues, just a different scale. And I think that you can make the shift into different stages if you have perfected your ability to adapt. So I'm dealing with the same stuff as Seismic as I did at Lessonly. People, processes, alignment. It's just different sizes, right? Like it's just a different size opportunity. And if you can figure that out and you can figure out how to adapt as a leader, it's going to be easy for you to be that person that can play at every stage. It's not it's not a normal thing. Like if you work at a venture capital firm, or Amy from a recruiting side, like it's hard to find people that can live in all those stages. I think the three of us are very lucky that we have had these experiences, right? But it's all about adaptability. And everything we talked about before, the empathy, the working hard, the proactivity, like all that stuff plays into your ability to play at any stage that you want as a leader.
Well, and true story from all of you represent marketing. What's interesting from a sales perspective, and I've been in the game for over 20 years. In my entire career, when I think back, there's only been one, that's it, leader that went from sub 5 million to $1.5 billion exit and is there as the CRO today. I've only seen it once. And so, Kyle, you mentioned as the business grows and that need to adapt, I find that the complexity of the problems become a lot greater at scale because there's a lot of different moving parts versus being able to just walk across the hall and talk to that person that owns that right there. You've got aliases for the alias, by the alias, to the alias, around the alias. You've got all these different things happening. If you haven't been there before, I think if you've seen bigger company dynamics and you've also seen smaller company dynamics and now you're poised to do both, you've got a better shot.
Yeah, and Udi's experience from being the fourth executive to a 7 billion valuation is different than mine, being at a growth stage, getting acquired and going into an exec team, right? Like everybody has different experiences. I think it's just being okay, like believing in yourself and your ability to do the job. That's it. It doesn't matter where you're at. It's like I've had to spend a lot of time self-reflecting, saying, yeah, I can do this. And that's okay. And I'm going to do it. Right. So it's a little bit of both.
And it's also having an executive leadership and board that supports that. Let's be honest. Right. That's We're not always in understanding. If I'm being perfectly frank here, and I think we've all heard and seen those stories before. And here's the thing, y'all: time flies when we're having fun. We've got about 10 minutes left to wrap things up and to be thinking about key takeaways, questions. So if there is any additional question that the audience has, please drop them. We would love to answer them for you. I'm not seeing the one question that came up, and I think this is really interesting, from Vasco. I hope I'm saying your name the right way. Experience in different industries is an advantage or disadvantage for a CXO. So let's talk about domain. Does it matter? Does it not matter? Do we care? Do we not care? How much do we care? What are we thinking there?
I would say it's highly dependent on the context of the role, right? If you're bringing someone to sell to CFOs, yes, if they've sold to CFOs before, it's going to really help them figure it out. Same goes for product marketing. For bringing someone to define product marketing for security domain, if they've done that before in that domain, it's going to save them like a year of a learning curve. However, in many leadership roles, as you go up and up, it's like Kyle said, it's the same problems at different scales in different domains. I've headed up marketing teams in 5 different industries, 5 different companies, and it's really the same issues. And the higher up you go, the less industry specific the problems are. You're dealing with recruiting, which is always a challenge, no matter what industry you're in. And there's never quite enough pipeline. And messaging could always be a little bit tighter. And it's the same problems, whether you're in security or staffing or telecom or revenue intelligence. So I think in some of these really high-level leadership roles, you should have the confidence to move across industries. I think there's some big chunks, like if you're at one B2B company, you'll probably be fine in another B2B company. Maybe moving B2B to B2C is kind of a big lateral move because those are kind of different beasts. But within those worlds, I don't see a problem moving around.
Yeah, I agree with Udi. I feel very seen by what he just said. I think it depends, which is such a horrible answer, but it totally depends. Our CPO that we just hired just like understands our buyer, like he gets it. He he came in and he had a new roadmap, or not new, but an incredible roadmap that he really like took us to the next level within what felt like days. Like he didn't need to understand our buyer because he got them. He understood the problem. He just did it. We have someone who's in charge of our customer success team, and she came from a different space. And again, she just understands customers. So different space, but again, she kills it because there's something about her, even her voice when she talks, there's this empathy. She's there to help solve the problem. So there's like skills that she's earned around her career that have nothing to do with industry. I think she could crush a job in absolutely any industry that she ever takes her career, because she just gets the customer, right? And so I personally came from B2B to B2B, not the same audience. And the first couple of weeks I was like, I gotta figure this out. But some of it's similar, right? Some of the events we attend are similar. And there's definitely areas where like, I don't have to think about those, for example, because I know them, right? So it's easier for sure, less of a learning curve, but I don't think it's impossible to switch to different industries. And sometimes I think it could be more fun than, selling to the exact same buyer, knowing everybody already.
I don't have anything else to add. I do. Alex Mahoney had a great question, by the way. Just Amy, I don't know if you want to throw on the.
That's how we're going to end this, is with this question, and then we're going to do key takeaways. So, Alex Mahoney, thank you for the wonderful question. In your roles today, where do you still experience imposter syndrome or fear, if at all? Great question, Alex. Thank you.
Every day.
How long do you have for my answer?
Yeah.
Udi and I talked about this on a podcast in 2020 when I interviewed him. But every single day, the difference is whether you let it control you or not. That's it. You're always going to hear it. It's going to be the voice in your head. You're always going to have some part of you that says you can't do it. And the reality is that you need to. I was talking to Robin Daniels, who's a fellow CMO, about this recently, and he said, what I do is that I recognize the voice and then I do the exact opposite of what it's saying. He actually uses it as fuel instead of it being like to hold him back. Very hard to do. Robin's a very energetic and personal individual, but for me, I don't let it control me, and I use it. I try to fight it as much as possible, but you have to recognize the fact that it will always be there. At least,
yeah. And I think it's part of it is really a personality trait. I'm sure some of it can be taught, but probably not the natural inclination. Some people just want to stay in their cocoon and always play it safe and do something that they know they're overqualified for. And if we have more time, we can talk about how that changes across genders and other underrepresented groups. Super interesting. But I think some people, like many of us here, I know I can speak for myself, I'm addicted to that uncomfortable feeling of, oh shit, today I've got to do something I've never done again, and I'm doing it again. And then I finish work, and then I go teach myself a piano piece that's 2 levels beyond my actual skill because I want to challenge myself, and I don't want to play something safe because I find that boring. And so I think it's that adrenaline rush that many of us are addicted to, that, yeah, give me a new challenge. I think it was Richard Branson who said that if you're asked to do something you've never done before, take the job and then learn how to do it. And I think that's kind of common to a lot of how we approach work.
Yeah, I agree. I think if everything is easy, then we're not doing anything special or different, right? The whole idea is to continue to be better. I definitely have imposter syndrome sometimes when I have to present numbers and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. This is good or it's bad. It's like, wait, let me double check that. Like, I always feel like it can't possibly be going this well. Wait a second. Which is not great, by the way, to double check your numbers 100 times, because the ops team doesn't love when you challenge everything they're doing every single time. But that's kind of something that I always, like when I'm doing, if something's going well, I always second guess it and double check it, which is definitely not a great character trait now that I say it out loud. But I think, I agree with what people have said is making life a little bit more challenging and making sure what you're doing, you're continuing to evolve. So obviously always out of your comfort zone means you're going to kind of second guess it.
Well, and I think it's hard, right, when you're on display. And at this level, you're on display. And it's natural to look across or outside of the company to say, what are those people talking about? What are they doing? What did they have accomplished? And it's that inner voice that gets to all of us. I would be lying if I said that I didn't struggle with it as well. It's like, wait, I should be doing this, or it should look like this, or I should act like this. And there's that famous quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And I really think that that's true. And so, Kyle, I love that trick of, I've worked with a coach where it's like, anytime you're festering in negative or fear-based thoughts, immediately think about the opposite word and just fester on that word over and over and over again. And your mindset starts to shift, which that's a little tip. It works. And here we are, y'all, at the end of our time together. So we're going to start winding things down. For the three of you, as you thought about being excited to be on the panel, and in the spirit of being helpful for anybody that has joined us, when you think about maybe 2 to 3 takeaways, what would you share in the final, let's call it 6 minutes, less than 6 minutes, now I'm looking at the clock. What are your top 2 to 3, maybe 1 tweet length takeaways?
Sure, I can jump in here. So I think when I think of the key takeaways, the first one is it's all about the people on your team, the people around you. The second is just having really clear communication. I think that's important and sometimes lost. And whether that's just telling people what you plan to do, what you're not going to do, just being really clear around your plans. And then I would say making sure that you understand where your gaps and weaknesses are and find the right people to help either teach you how to fill them or fill them with other people within the organization or hire for those. And don't be afraid to admit when you don't know how to do something or figure it out.
Love it. Udi, what are your quick bites here?
Yeah, I'm happy to extend on what Anna started. So I would also start on the people front with hiring for your weaknesses. The next thing is to give them all the resources that they need to succeed, whether that's coaching, your own time, getting them actual budget, and finally get out of their way and see them grow and see them soar. And that's the thing that makes me most proud, seeing team members who've been with me for a few years, who I hire them with a completely different skill set and completely different set of experiences, and see them grow with all the resources and support that I could give them. And the last thing that I think in general is really good career advice is be biased for action. The surest way to be overlooked for that next promotion is to live in your little cocoon and never peek your head out. Just be biased for action. If you see something, say something, do something. Nothing is someone else's problem.
Yeah, you should never be in a situation where you're standing still, in my opinion. Be proactive, keep moving. Also, think long and hard whether you actually want to be a leader or not a leader, a manager. There can be ICs that are leaders, to be clear. Whether you want to be a manager, whether you want to sit in the seat that the three of us are in, right? The four of us actually, right? So just be not everybody has to be a CXO. It's not for everybody, right?
There isn't enough therapists in the world for everyone.
Yeah, there's not. Get agreements seek alignment with your peers. And then, I think Alex's question was amazing. I think it's like, use fear as a forcing function to keep moving, and don't ever listen to it because it's usually just false. So for me, it's always been that, and be vulnerable. And I think that kind of plays into the fear aspect.
For me, I'm going to really encourage everyone to get super clear, because clarity is king. And how do you do that? That's a big question that I get is, well, how do I know? And it's amazing to me that when we show up to listen to ourselves versus looking to everybody else to tell us what we should do, it's quite powerful. I'm a huge fan of the power of a journal, and then using a scorecard, right, on your existing role and where you want to be headed next, and how those two things shake out. Because perception of all the glitz and glory and lovely things at this level, yes, some of that is true, but it's really hard work and it's really competitive, and it's hard to keep that seat at the table, and what you put into it is what you get out of it, and it's not for the faint of heart. And all of you mentioned something about people. If it's not about people, you have no business being in the role. That's a little bit of tough love on the way out. Thank you all for joining us. But all fun aside, I find that people like having the role for ego and not about what it really takes to be in the role and be successful and really be an ambassador for the task at hand. You are the sum of your parts. So on that note, Anna, Udi, Kyle, who has such a piece of my heart, and for all of you that joined us, this was a beautiful conversation to have out loud. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you. Taylor, you're back with us. We know that there's going to be a replay. So for anybody that joined us midway through, yes, this will be replayed and sent out. And so thank you. Happy 2022, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. We hope to see you tomorrow for our last day. We're going to kick off the day with a panel on retaining to attain. Make sure to check out our sponsor booths. And thank you once again to our speakers and our moderators. Thank you so much.